Working with lumber that has this live edge where the bark is retained is something that's become very popular these days, and it's easy to understand why. It adds color and texture and contrast, and it allows you to build a project that's truly unique. I really like the look of live edge boards, so I decided to use them to build a project today that has been very popular in the last few years, these floating shelves. Today I'll show you how I made them and share a few tips so that you can make them too. Now, one of the first questions that you have to answer when working with live edge lumber is, what do you do with the bark? Now, you can use a thin epoxy or a solvent-based finish like shellac to try to keep it attached, but usually it just dries out and then starts to fall off. So I choose to remove it completely, but leaving behind the shape of the veiny edge. The trick is to remove the bark without cutting into or changing the natural shape and texture of the edge. The easiest way I've found to do this is to use a draw knife or large chisel to remove most of the bark, and then finish the job with brushes and sandpaper. You can use a handheld wire brush, but I found that a wire or nylon drill attachment works even better. Working across the grain with the brush helps prevent gouging the wood or forming grooves. A sanding wheel that features sandpaper strips or flaps works great for smoothing the surface. Now that I have the bark removed on the edges of the board and I've sanded that all smooth, the next thing that needs to get sanded are the surfaces of the shelves. Now, you can use a handheld random orbit sander or a handheld belt sander, but this drum sander really shines in this kind of technique. It removes a little bit of material each pass through, something like a thickness surfacer, and in the same way you adjust the height of the head with this handle right here. You don't want to move in increments more than, say, 1/64 of an inch, but you'll get the hang of it as you go. Once each of the boards have been sanded completely with one grit, you simply remove the existing sandpaper and replace it with a finer grit, and you repeat the process. I'm going to fire up my dust collector, sand all my shelves, and then I'll meet you over at the bandsaw for some shaping. Now, as you saw earlier, these shelves, one end fits into a square corner, so this end needs to remain at 90 degrees, but this end is exposed. So in order to add some shape and detail to it, I just sketched a shallow curve onto the end. I'm going to cut that on the bandsaw here. I've got a 1/2-inch blade in the saw, which was actually left over from a previous job, but it's going to work perfectly for this cut. The only thing I need to do now is to adjust the height of the guides to fit the thickness of my wood, and I'm ready to cut the curve. The way these shelves manage to float on the wall is that they're held there by this clever little hardware. It features a bracket that gets screwed to the wall and a pin that slides into a hole that you drill into the shelf. Now, the way that this hardware remains hidden from sight is, of course, you have the hole that you drilled for this pin, but we also have to form a mortise, a rectangular hole chopped into the back that will capture the mounting plate. Now, to find the locations for your brackets, you should transfer the locations of the wall stud behind your shelves to your board, like I did in this case. Now, here it was like 1.5 inches in from the end and 16 inches on center, which is fairly common. It's best if they are attached to wall studs. That's how they're strongest and most secure. But if you can't find a wall stud for both of them, then you can use wall anchors, but make sure it's of sufficient quality to bear some weight. It's important that these are securely mounted to the wall. I marked the depth of the support pin on the drill bit. Then I drilled the holes. These holes need to be parallel to the top and bottom of the shelf and perpendicular to the back edge. Next, I traced the bracket on the back of the shelf and chiseled out the mortise. The final step is to hang the shelves on the wall. All I had to do was attach the brackets to the wall studs or use wall anchors, then slide the shelves onto the pins. There you have it. I love the look of the live edge shelf boards, and this is a really easy system for hanging them. I'm Rob Johnstone for Woodworker's Journal. Thanks for watching, and keep on making sawdust.